Hey, what's going on, guys? This is Daniel, one half of the Kwok Brothers. And in this webinar, we're going to talk about how we went from 0 to 75 units in under just 1 year. So like any other webinar, I'm going to go ahead and start with a disclaimer. So Novo Elite Incorporated, doing business as the Kwok Brothers, do not warrant, promise, guarantee any results from this training presentation. We recommend that all viewers and participants to consult with licensed and competent legal professionals before engaging in any investment or business transactions. This is not an offering of any investment opportunity. This presentation is for educational purposes only and shall not be regarded as any legal, tax, and or financial advice. So let's go ahead and get right into the mix by talking about case study number 1. Now, this is for rental units, and this is actually our very first deal ever. So this is an owner financing acquisition, which if you guys don't know what that is, no problem. We'll talk about that here in a second. But we bought this thing for 10% down, no money of our own, and it cash flows for $600 a month. And guess what, guys? At the time, we were only 24 and 22 years old. Now, you guys are probably asking, how did we find it? So actually, one day, Sam put out a little Facebook post on one of those local buy and sell trade Facebook groups. And he said something along the lines of that he's looking for a general contractor because at the time, we were actually looking to build a team for doing real estate deals in that local area. And well, we actually had a seller reach out to Sam saying that he's got a portfolio of properties that he's selling due to retirement, and he was wondering if our investors were at all interested. Now, of course, we obliged that offer, and there's the email that he sent over to us that included the profit and loss statements, the numbers for the properties, the rent roll. Now, you guys are probably thinking at this moment that you've already seen examples like this because you've went to a ton of webinars, you went to a lot of different meetups, you went to a lot of different groups, podcasts, books, you name it. So why is this different? Well, if you struggle with acquiring cash flowing properties in the past, it's not your fault because not everyone starts with a small loan of $1 million. So I want to put your fears to rest because what you will learn today is absolutely different. Now, chances are what held you back is not having the capital or the credit to get funding to acquire your next cash flowing deal or maybe even your first cash flowing deal. So if you ever thought that this has to be easier, then you are absolutely right. Because after this webinar, you will learn exactly what we did to go from 0 to 75 units in just 1 year without having any capital or credit. Now, before we continue, please silence your phone. So please turn off Facebook, Instagram, and any other distractions that may stand in the way between you and all this information and knowledge that's going to help you out. So our goal for this webinar is to have you believe that the only way for you to acquire more rental properties is through the FORCE strategy. Ultimately, we're going to show you how exactly to control your financial success, expand your freedom, create more time, and broaden your influence. So let me actually take this time to reintroduce myself. My name is Daniel. I'm one half of the Kwok Brothers. And yes, the guy standing to the right with a much slicker suit and a much taller physique and a little bit better looking, yes, that is me, right? And it all started for Sammy and I when we were actually in college. I was 19 at the time and Sam was about 21 years old. And well, our story wasn't exactly the best if you're looking at the start of where we began. So we actually were immigrants to this country. The first 6 years, we didn't really have a whole lot of things. And well, fast forward, I'm 19 years old. I actually have negative $187.65 in my bank account. My brother and I both have maxed out credit cards. And well, life just was not good. It was not easy. And we were well beyond just your typical broke college students. So we decided to do something about it. And one day we came across this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And well, after reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, we actually learned stuff like assets and cash flow and how you can build wealth rather than becoming rich. So we were inspired. So, we tried all sorts of things, spending hundreds of dollars on books and seminars. We tried watching free YouTube videos. We tried with wholesaling, but realized we would be creating a job for ourselves. And well, it ultimately got to a place where we had 2.5 years of not doing any deals. And well, we thought about what was the problem. And here was our problem. Our problem was that, well, we didn't have a huge network. We didn't have money in our pockets. We literally had empty pockets and we didn't exactly know where to start. And we felt stuck. And well, for me personally, whenever there was times in my life where I felt stuck, I turned to God. And I was very angry at God. I was very frustrated. And obviously, for those of you guys that know Sam and I very well, you guys know that we're followers of Jesus. And I asked God, what could I possibly be doing wrong? What more could I do to create success for myself? I thought I was doing a great job. And well, he turned me to this passage in the Bible in John chapter 13, where Jesus has this realization that he's the most powerful being in this universe, and he's hanging out with his disciples. And to respond to that sentiment that he is the most powerful being in the universe, he actually started out putting a basin of water, started removing his outer garments, and he started washing the feet of his disciples. Now, the significance of that act is that that act itself was actually reserved for the lowest ranking servant of that time. And by doing that significant act, Jesus was showing his ultimate love and ultimate humility of wanting to show that to his disciples. So what was my response, right? What was the lesson that I learned? And what was my epiphany? Well, my epiphany was that I was who my 5 friends are. I wasn't washing the feet of the people around me in my industry. I wasn't giving them value. So I started giving them value. I started asking people, hey, what is the number one challenge that you have in your business right now? And that's when I realized that every single individual that I asked pretty much said the same thing, that they have no capital, they have no financing, and they have no ways and no means of being able to get the deals done. And they were finding some phenomenal deals. So I started doing some researching and some digging up, and I found out about the strategy where you can actually buy properties, no money down, no credit, real estate investing. And now I was very skeptical along with my brother. We looked a lot like that baby that you see in that picture. But then one day I had a conversation with a buddy of mine who broke down owner financing. And well, he actually used to work for a car dealership, and he used to tell me, Daniel, the way that we made our money was actually not selling cars, it was actually financing the people who would buy the cars from us. And we would actually make money as a bank, make money off the interest because we were financing people. And I was like, well, that's all great and all. I can buy properties, owner financing, right? That's great. That's awesome. But I still need a down payment. That was my ultimate problem. I didn't have money. We didn't have money for the down payment. But that's actually what led to my another epiphany that I had. So God answered me again. And let me take you back to the story. So I remember when I was 9 years old, I was hanging out with a friend of mine. We were having a good old play date. And I remember one day his mom walked in the room and asked us if we wanted any dessert, specifically apple pie. And both of us, being the typical 9-year-old boys, we were like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do it. I love some dessert. I'm never going to say no to dessert ever again. The only problem was that she didn't have sugar. She had every other ingredient, right? She had the apples, she had the flour, she had the cooking materials, but she didn't have the sugar, right? The main ingredient of what makes a dessert, she didn't have. So instead of being, down on herself and saying, well, kids, we're not going to be able to have apple pie, she got creative. She started marching up and down the hallway of her apartment complex, and she started asking her neighbors for sugar. But she had this interesting proposition. Whichever neighbor gave her the amount of sugar that she needed to make the pie, she would actually give a slice to that neighbor. And well, for me, that was ingenious, right? Because she was able to take what she needed and she was able to give back in the form of value. And that's when I realized that I could raise the money, right? I could get money from something, from somebody that has the money, and I could use it to create my metaphorical apple pie. And in exchange, I can give them a slice. I can give them something that they didn't have before because of my knowledge and ability to bake the pie, quote unquote. So how did that work out for me? Well, today is a little bit of a different story, right? So my brother and I are both married. Matter of fact, Sam just recently had his first kid. But in terms of our business, we couldn't be happier. We actually went up to 87 doors at one point. We got to hang out with Mark Cuban. I got to travel all around the country helping people with their real estate investing business. But you guys are probably watching this webinar right now thinking, could this work for other people as well, right? You're probably thinking, well, good for you, Daniel. Good for you, Sam. But what about me? Well, let's talk about other people besides ourselves. So this is Shane's a very good buddy of mine. He says, I was able to get into a 4-unit owner financing deal after a few months of working with the Kwok brothers. I love the relationship I have with them. They are a huge help when we need it. So here's what we're going to cover today. Secret number 1, the FORCE strategy is the key to acquiring real estate without using your own money or credit. Secret number 2, breaking down our secret owner financing system. Secret number 3, the secret key to raising money even if you don't have a large network. We're going to address all those problems today. And that solution, my friends, is what's called the FORCE strategy. Now, what is the FORCE strategy? Well, let's break it down. So FORCE is an acronym in which F stands for find the deals, secret off-market ways of looking for deals. The O stands for owner finance it, how to never need a bank or hard money lender ever again to acquire a property. So we found the deal, we acquired it through owner financing. We're going to raise the capital, how to get investors or lenders to chase you to do deals with you. The C stands for cash flow it, how to build a long-term cash flow empire. And the E, last but not least, stands for expand your financial freedom, how to scale your empire even bigger. So let's go ahead and start with F, right? Number one, find the deals. And well, here's actually what I did when first starting off in my real estate career. Now, as you guys see on the screen, there is a for rent sign. And what I used to do, I used to spend every Tuesday and every Saturday driving around for a couple hours in a particular market that I liked doing deals in. And I would literally just look for rent signs that are out front. And what I would do is I would pull up to those for rent signs. I would see the number, I would call it, and I would say, hi, my name is Daniel. I'm a local real estate investor. I saw your for rent sign. I wanted to see if you had any interest in selling. Now, if they said yes, I would schedule an appointment where, the seller and I could meet at a later date. We could talk through the details and et cetera, et cetera. Now, if they said no, I would ask them, well, if you don't want to sell, would you like to buy more properties? And in doing so, I would create what's called a buyer's list. And well, if they didn't want to do either of those things, I would ask them if they wanted to network and build a relationship and possibly, join one of my meetup groups that I was attending at the time. And therefore, I can still keep the relationship. I can still have them in my network. Therefore, if anything were to come about, it would happen. So that's literally what I used to do. I used to spend every Tuesday and Saturday, drive around sign after sign after sign. And I got a phenomenal network just by doing that. I got in touch with sellers, bought some properties. I built my buyer's list. And I also actually even raised some capital in building the relationship with these sellers. So let's talk about owner financing, how to never need a bank or hard money lender ever again to acquire a property. Well, let's first talk about what is owner financing. So you've got you, the buyer, you got the seller, and that line right there represents their ownership stakes in their property. Now, in an owner financing scenario, instead of you having to go the traditional route, which is to go to a bank, put 20%, 25% down, get the interest rate, have it go through all the paperwork, all the underwriting, get the appraisal, get the inspection, get the BPO. Instead of having to do all that, the seller instead becomes your bank. And you give the monthly payment to the seller instead of going the traditional route and paying a bank. And the ownership then goes to you as opposed to the seller. So that means no more bank, no more loan applications, no more month-long processes, multiple month-long processes of you having to go through a bank. And of course, no more not being able to do multiple deals in 1 year because the bank is afraid that you're going to have to go through the underwriting process again. You get too many hard inquiries on your report. None of that, right? So no more banks, no more loan applications, right? Praise the Lord. And so let's go ahead and talk about case number 2. So I actually bought this 8-unit apartment complex, no money down. It was indeed owner financing acquisition, no money down, no money of our own, and it cash flows $1,800 a month. Now, how did we find it? So at the time, I was actually partnering with a property manager in the local area. Him and I were buying properties together. And our seller here actually called his management sign and asked for management agreements. Well, after visiting the property and seeing so many problems that the property had, such as flooding, right? There was electrical issues, like all the units were vacant, right? There was squatters in the building. I mean, it was just an absolute mess. We actually ended up buying the property because we were able to listen and figure out what value propositions we could offer to solve his problems. And it led to this, no money down owner financing. And that actually right there is a real closing statement, August 30th, 2017, of a property that I bought, no money down. But you might be saying, I've tried asking for owner financing before. It's next to impossible to get a yes. Well, of course, right? Because everything takes time to learn and be trained and develop a skill. So here's a technique that I call creating a new association. I use it in my negotiations all the time. Now, I want you guys to pay attention to the screen. What do you see? You see a light brown watch. Now, if I say those words, light brown watch, you probably wouldn't think that much of it. Now, let me tell you a story to create a new association. So I remember this one time, it was about 5 years ago. I was in Korea. I was with myself, my brother, and my parents. And now, guys, keep in mind, I don't get to see my parents a whole lot because they live over there in Korea. My dad's a pastor, and Sammy and I live in the Chicagoland area. So, I hardly ever get to see my parents. So I remember I was visiting them. on a trip. It was over the summer, and we decided to do a little family vacation to a city called Busan. Now, in Busan, it's about a 5-hour road trip to get there from Seoul, which is where my parents live. So on the drive down, I remember all my dad talked about was this little shack, right, that he had to buy something from. Now, he was in need of a watch, so he talked all that time about, I'm going to buy a watch from this place. Now, the reason why this shack was so important was because my mom and my dad recently had watched a movie in which that shack, that little store, was featured in that film. So it was very popular. It was very famous. And he wanted to go check it out because it was a movie that he particularly enjoyed. And he wanted to buy something that he genuinely needed, which was a watch. So he got down there, he bought the watch, and he was super happy. He was showing it off to me, Sammy, my mom, to the point where we got so annoyed. And I was very happy for him, right? Like, he got his watch, and I bought a bunch of rip-off jerseys that I was going to wear when I got back to the States. So I remember it was about a week later. It was time for myself and Sam to go back to the United States and run our business. Well, I remember just before I got to security, I talked to my mom, and I said, oh my gosh, I forgot I was going to buy a watch here because, things were a lot cheaper compared to the United States. I forgot I needed to buy a watch. And without hesitation, right, my dad took off that brown watch, that light brown watch that he bought from that shack in Busan, the watch that he loved so much, that he took so much pride in, that he bragged about to all of us. And without hesitation, he took off that watch and he put it on my wrist. And he said, son, take care of the watch. I'll see you when you get back, or I'll see you when I get over there. Now, if I were to tell you light brown watch, chances are you have a little bit of a different association compared to 5 minutes ago when I said those exact same words. So how do we apply it? What is the formula? Well, I'll tell you the formula. It's you find the people, right? You find the people. Instead of finding problems, you find the people. You identify the problems. You create the solution. You provide the value, and the value always, always brings money. But that reassociation is when you have to listen to their problems and provide the solutions to offer them the value. Identifying the problems so we could bring the solutions. Now, we got to ask questions. That's so key in negotiating for owner financing. One of the things that people lack all the time is follow-up questions. I have what's called the 3 times rule. I ask this question, why are you selling, in 3 different ways. I ask it from a general standpoint. When I first meet them, or when we do the property walkthrough, I ask it from an emotional standpoint. So when I ask them, hey, why are you selling, right? Or when they get talking about their family, how they have to move down south, or they have to move a certain place because they're just tired of dealing with this property, right? They hate getting calls from tenants. I ask them again, why are you selling? And same thing with financial. When they start talking about how awesome the property is and the cash flow, I ask the question, why are you selling? Now, I do it in a little different way than most people would. I use a technique called social jujitsu. Now, what is social jujitsu? Well, social jujitsu is when you take the strength of somebody else and you turn it against them, just like real life martial art jujitsu, right? You may have an opponent that's stronger, bigger, faster, but the whole concept of the martial art of jiu-jitsu is you use all those positive attributes against them. So it's the same thing. You may have a seller in which they have it made, right? The property is awesome. The tenants pay on time. And remember, it's all about getting more information so we can identify the problem so we could provide the solution. I'll ask them from a general standpoint. Hey, why are you selling this property? And they'll give me some answer, right? And they'll talk about the emotional aspect of it, how this building is a cash cow and it's going to help you out. It's going to make you happy. And it's going to be the solution to all your problems. Now, of course, they're going to say that because they want their property to be valued a lot higher so they can sell it at a much higher price. But just like in jiu-jitsu, I'm going to use that against them. So when they say, oh, it's a beautiful cash cow, right? It's awesome. It's provided so many great things for me and my family. Then I'll ask them, so if that's the case, why are you selling? Because that allows me to get more information, more insight on what their drive motives and what their problems really are. Same thing with the financial aspect. They're going to say that the tenants always pay on time, that the taxes are low, that the maintenance is very low. There's barely any repairs that have to be done. The roof is brand new, right? The wind will blow and they'll say that the building is amazing. And it's the same thing. We say, well, if the building is performing that well financially, then if you don't mind me asking, why are you selling? So we want to ask these follow-up questions to get more information, to identify the problem so we could provide the value. Another piece of value that we could provide and another benefit of owner financing is potential tax deference on top of continuing to receive income. Because guys, let's be real. If you've been a landlord for 20, 25, 30 years, you're used to a certain level of lifestyle. You have the habit of collecting that rent every single month. So there's the benefit. You continue that stream of passive income coming in. They also make extra money charging the interest. Guys, there's no accident that the banks are the richest entities in the world. It's because they make money through money. And it's the same thing that the sellers will benefit from by selling it through owner financing. And another benefit, you can close extremely quick. Why? Because there is no bank. There's no appraisal period. There's no inspection period. There's no waiting for your commercial lender to get back to you, right? And you can also adjust the terms based on what the needs of the seller are. So whether it's a 30-year-old seller or a 75-year-old seller, you can adjust the terms to fit the needs of that seller. Now, here's my ultimate negotiation technique for negotiating owner financing. I call it draw the line. And what I'll do is I'll sit down with the seller after the property walkthrough and I'll say, here's what I can do for you, Mr. Seller. Right? On one end, I can give you a cash offer of $1 million. Let's say that's the purchase price that they were asking for, right? That was their official asking price, $1 million. I would sit down with them and say, hey, Mr. Seller, here's what I can do. Let's say that I hypothetically gave you $1 million. Now, depending on your closing costs, your taxes you may have to pay, and the loan and the debt service you may have on the property, right? You may not walk away with a whole lot. Matter of fact, a majority of the negotiations that I've experienced, the owner walks away with only 50 to 60% of their purchase price. That's $500,000 to $600,000 that you're walking away with if the purchase price is $1 million. That's crazy to think about, isn't it? Well, here's what I can do for you, right? There's owner financing offer. It's a bit more of a creative option. I can still give you that $1 million, but there's actually less closing costs. There's potential tax deference. Terms can be made to cover the debt service, and you make money off the interest. So with a typical 10% down, 4% interest, and a 25-year note, you actually end up walking away with $1,425,159.47. Now, guys, let me remind you that I always tell them throughout the conversation to check with their CPA, check with their tax professional to see if this is something that's beneficial. If it's not something that's beneficial, right, then I have no interest in doing it because at the end of the day, I want to create a win-win scenario. But with that last example, is that a win-win scenario? Absolutely. The seller has pretty much tripled the amount of money that they're walking away with. They make money, they continue the income. There's a lot of benefits here, and I don't have to go through a bank. It's a complete win-win scenario. Now let's talk about raising the capital. How to get investors or lenders to chase you to do deals with you. Now you might be saying, but I don't have a network of people with the money. Well, guess what? I didn't either. When I first started and I had negative $187 in my bank account. Now, do you think that 19-year-old with that number in his bank account had a large network of people with large sums of capital? No, absolutely not. So here's what I did. I learned how to network. I learned how to go to different meetup groups that pertain to real estate investing. And I learned how to build relationships, right? I increased my knowledge, so I increased my value creation. And I realized the more I knew and the more relationships that I built, the more valuable that I really was. So increase the knowledge, increase the value creation. That's what attracts people. At the end of the day, we like people that can do things for us. So let me give you an example in terms of creating value, right? This is what I call the $10,000 phone story. Now, I have here right now, as I record this webinar, my smartphone in my hand. Now, if I were to ask you how much you would pay for my Samsung S10, right? What would you say? Right? Most people would probably say, well, I'll probably check on eBay or Amazon and see how much I can get a Galaxy S10 for, and I'll probably just give you a little lower number than that. Well, what if I told you that that smartphone is included with hundreds and potentially thousands of potential passive investors, along with a huge network of people in my real estate team, my real estate partners, all the data that I have and all the deals that I've done, right? All the pitch decks, all the wonderful bells and whistles that I've been able to accumulate in my real estate career. Chances are you would pay a lot more for that phone compared to 10 seconds ago, 15 seconds ago. But you might be saying, well, Daniel, I don't know how to pitch myself. I'm too nervous. Even if I had all those people, I don't know what I would say. So here's how I learned how to pitch. A good starting point for me was reading the book Pitch Anything by a gentleman named Oren Klaff. Now he's got a new book out that's also phenomenal as well. But I remember reading so many different books on how to raise capital, how to present, persuade, and win the deal. And I loved this book. It was a phenomenal starting point for me to start how to pitch. It was a phenomenal starting point in terms of learning how to pitch investors that thought that they had it all. But you might also be saying, no one will trust me, right? Now, if you're asking that question, you're probably doubting yourself. Now, if you're asking that question, you're probably doubting yourself, right? There's a little bit of a lack of confidence there. Well, here's the question that no one asks themselves. Do you even deserve to raise money? Because a lot like raising a lot, do you even deserve to raise money? Because raising money and doing a deal is a lot like flying a plane, right? If I asked the average person, hey, are you qualified to fly a plane? Chances are they would say no. Well, that's just like executing a deal, right? It's like flying a plane. Things can go bad south very quickly, right? And things can go great. It's granted, right? But the individual who's not experienced, who doesn't have the knowledge, who doesn't have the team, who's not qualified, they're not going to do as well compared to somebody who is qualified. So I encourage you, right? I strongly advise that you read up, you get the knowledge, you build a team, you have a mentor, and you get qualified to fly a plane before people actually get on it, right? Now, another thing you might be saying is, well, I don't know how to structure the terms with my lenders and partners. Well, let me give you a couple examples on how I personally did that in my career. So here's raising capital example number one. There's you, there's the property, and there's the property, and there's your partner. What I would do is I would create an entity called, let's say, the Awesome LLC. I would have a 50% stake. My partner would have a 50% stake. And we would actually go ahead and I would have a 50% stake, and my partner would have a 50% stake, and my partner would put in a $25,000 contribution in which they would go to the down payment of the seller financing. Now, what this allows us to do is the rents that come from the property, the income that comes from the property, will go ahead and be contributed out to both of us in terms of cash flow. It means I do all the work, the partner puts in all the capital, and we distribute it 50-50. Now, here's another example. Here's raising capital example number two. In this case scenario, I get 100% stake. The lender gets 0% stake. There is still the Awesome LLC, but this time it's a $100,000 secured loan, 12% annualized interest with a 12-month maturity. And what that does, it allows me to acquire the property cash. So after I rehab it and sell it, I give them $12,000 in interest, and I get 100% of the net profit. So they didn't do any of the work, and I gave them a 12% annualized interest, which is better than a lot of different investment vehicles out there. And I do all the work and make the profit. So here are the effects of the FORCE strategy. So you guys heard my story at 19 years old, having negative $187 in my bank account. Well, today I'm 25 years old. At one point, I had 87 doors. This past year, I actually had a couple episodes of selling my properties because it's such a high market. And I've done deals all over the country. I've done fix and flips. I've done notes. I've done apartment buildings. I've done single families, duplexes, you name it. And right now, I'm a senior partner at a real estate fund that my friend Kevin and I started together. And we're doing large 8-9-figure development deals right now. That's the effects of the FORCE strategy. So let's go ahead and boil it down. Owner financing, which is no bank and no credit. Raising capital using no capital of your unlimited growth potential. So let's go ahead and take a look at another case study. This is a 36-unit apartment complex. It was actually my very first multi-million-dollar deal. Now, I did use bank financing on this one. It was the only property that I've ever bank financed. I did have credit and money partners to make our partnerships much more stronger in the eyes of the bank. And we actually found it through our partners. So as I mentioned earlier, one of my partners was a property manager. He actually had a friend that wanted to sell his 36-unit building, and he gave us a call. And right now, the expected cash flow is $6,000 a month. Now, here's the beauty of this deal. We actually bought this thing with $300 per unit below market rent, meaning that we were able to increase the income, increase the rent. And because we increased the rent, we actually were able to increase the value of the asset. Now, again, how did we find it? Well, our property manager's friend actually owned the building for a very long time. He wanted to liquidate, and he actually called us. He wanted to liquidate, and he actually called us to see if we were interested. We negotiated, and that's how we found it. Now, how do we fund it? Well, it actually was very funny because myself and Sam, we went to a networking event that night where we found out about this deal. And within 3 hours, we actually raised the whole down payment, which was about $300,000. And we did so by networking with other people, sharing with individuals the deal that we just had fall into our laps that morning. And people were interested. People started asking questions. And before we knew it, people were saying, I want in on that deal. And fortunately for us, they were accredited investors who were very bankable, who looked very promising and very favorable in the eyes of our commercial lender. So let's go ahead and talk about another testimonial. This is Alex. Alex said, I started working with Daniel 3 years ago. Within 12 months, I was able to raise over $2 million in capital using the Force strategy, meaning that he was able to break down to his investors what the Force strategy was, what he was planning on doing with it, and his investors bought in. And by the way, guys, what it doesn't say on the screen, at the time of me working with Alex, Alex was actually only 18 years old, and he was able to raise the $2 million in capital using what we have to say. Expand your financial freedom, how to scale your empire even bigger. Well, here's the thing, guys. Income follows what you know and who you know. I always say that information plus relationships equal success. Now, I know what you guys are thinking right now, the information is cheap. Right? I mean, you guys can go on Google, you can look at books, you can look at CDs, podcasts. There's countless of different ways that you guys can get educated on the world of real estate investing. But here's my question to you. Why hasn't it worked for everyone? If the information is out there, if anybody can easily Google, they can go to the library, even if they didn't have a smartphone or a laptop, they can go to a library or go to any public place, use the computer, and they can get all this knowledge for themselves. If it's that easy, if that's the reality of the situation, why isn't everybody succeeding? Why are only the few succeeding in the world of real estate investing? Well, I want to use my own brother as an example. Here's what worked with Sam. And for those of you guys that don't know, Sam was actually in the military, right? So look at his goofy smile, right? With all his gear, right? There's cool army pictures of him. Now, here's why the military training worked for Sam. There was a culture, right? There was a way of being. There was rituals. There was discipline. There was fixed habits every single day. He also had a mentor, right? His drill sergeant. And he also had his comrades, his battle buddies, right? And he had an environment. He was immersed in this environment as opposed to just going on Google and reading about the military, right? He lived it every single day. So that's where the biggest epiphany for Sam and I both happened. The key, right? It was information plus immersion plus engagement equaled success, right? The information comes from Google. It comes from all these different podcasts, books, et cetera, et cetera. The immersion comes from the habits and the disciplines that we create every single day. And the engagement comes from the people around us, who we choose to surround ourselves in terms of our network. All of that equals success. 99% of people that I personally meet, having traveled all around the country, training hundreds and thousands of real estate investors, 99% of people only focus on the information. And even at that, the information that they're choosing to ingest is not even that good. It's not quality information. So let me ask you something. Is it possible to learn swimming by reading a book, right? Or do you have to go ahead and jump in a pool and actually do it yourself? Now, here are a couple of choices that Sam and I have for you. Here's choice number one for you, right? You can do this on your own, spend hours of research figuring out from scratch, possibly costing more money and time because of the mistakes, and not get the help from those that are already doing it, right? I say it all the time. The education you get out there in the real world is going to be so much more expensive than the education you get here, right? Or here's choice number two. Or you can let us give you the system that we've already fine-tuned over the years, leveraging our mistakes, showing you the blueprints that have already worked on hundreds of people. Do it right the first time, fast. So here's what I propose. Speak to somebody in our office about getting help to achieve results. So here's the next step that you can take if you so choose to take the next step in your level of success. Book a 30 to 45-minute discovery call with one of the guys at our office. And here's what we offer, right? Here's what we want to offer you. Exact step-by-step on how to negotiate for owner financing, including contracts and scripts to use, how to network with private money lenders and potential partners, what to say to your private money lenders so they'll throw their money on your lap, how to find off-market deals without agents, how to analyze and underwrite deals with foolproof accuracy, along with contract templates, executive summary templates, access to funding, and calculators. So here's a couple of people who've been very, very happy in terms of the decision that they made working with us. So this is Lisa. By working with the Kwok Brothers, I've been able to acquire my first 4-unit and learn how to properly manage it. And I actually know Lisa myself personally. She actually cash flows about $975 a month from that 4-unit. Here's Brandon. I had Sam work with me, and I got out of a really bad deal just by knowing what to look for. Now I know which deals to look for and how to avoid mistakes. Here's Kevin. Kevin's a very good friend of mine. The Kwok brothers helped me get into a potential 16-unit building by using owner financing. Now they're helping me get into an Airbnb deal. And I know Kevin myself, right? The results that he have now are well beyond what you see on the screen today. Now, here's the next step for you guys. Book a 30 to 45-minute discovery call with one of the people in our office, one of our staff members, somebody in our Kwok brothers family, and they'll tell you and give you information on what it means to work with us, exactly what you're going to get, how much you have to invest. And that's all that is, guys. All it is just you getting information on what we have to offer to help you potentially take your first step or your next step in your real estate investing business. Now, the call may be 15 minutes. It might be an hour. As long as you have questions and you're looking for more information, our people will stay on the line with you. So I encourage you guys to click on that link to the next step, book a 30 to 45-minute discovery call, talk to one of our people, and let's see what we can do to get you on the right track to figuring out your real estate investing career or even taking your game to the next level. Either way, we're going to continue to do this with hundreds and thousands of people across the country. So we love to add you to that list. So thanks, guys. Much love. This was Daniel from one half of the Kwok brothers, and I hope to see you guys very soon.